Thank you, Father, for this wonderful opportunity to sit around your word as like-minded people and discuss all the gems that is within the Hebrew text, and also that's relevant to us to understand for the time frame we're in. We ask you, Father, through your Spirit, reveal to us what you want us to know. Also enlighten us into your character, who you are, and our plan and the purpose you have for our lives. I ask it all in the mighty name of Yeshua Mashiach. Amen. Amen. All right, so Lech Lechah. There's the Hebrew on the top right. Lamed Kaf. Anyone want to share some insights regarding those letters, if you have any?
It's the highest and the lowest.
It's a low, yeah, it's one that goes down, but it doesn't go down, I think, as low as the, no, it does go down. Yeah, it's one that reaches down, and it's one that reaches up. So what do you think is the purpose of connecting the lowest with the highest?
Well,
yeah, the kaf is a collective hand. That's the hand of man or humanity, connecting through the lamed. What's the lamed? A teacher, shepherd's staff. It also means learning and teaching. So the learning and the teaching that comes from above is now being given to the people below through the collective hand. Now today we're going to look at, there's basically 4 levels that I identified. You get Choshek, which is translated as Sheol, jail, waters of the deep and darkness. That existed prior to creation in the state of Bereshit, which is part of the previous separation cycle. Then you get Eretz, where we're going to look at that today, which is, I call, the kingdom of the south, but not the kingdom of darkness, but it's connected in some way. It's a lower kingdom. Then you get the kingdom of Shamayim, which is the one that's higher. And the reason I'm using these terms, because Yahweh gave Abraham a promise. What was in the promise? Anyone can make the connection to Shamayim and Eretz regarding the promise made to Abraham when he cut the covenant. Stars, that's Shamayim. Sand at the seashore, that's Eretz.
Yes? Just on that note, we're just listening on the radio out of the blue, and this guy was talking about they've worked out the number of grains of sand on all of the seashore in the world. Guess what it is? 6 followed by 23 zeros. And interestingly enough, it corresponds with the number of stars in the universe.
This is science.
This is science. How to work it out, I don't know.
So what, 6 with 23 zeros going to come up here?
Yes.
No, I don't know. I would have believed it would say 6 with 26.
Well, maybe it
zeros.
Was it? I thought 23.
I said 23. Anyway.
Well, they were 2
interesting thing was it?
Yeah.
So 3 out.
The same, they calculated
There's the same as the stars, is the same as the sand.
Well, what they say is not scriptural because Yahweh said you can't count it. But it's a lot.
Got it wrong.
No, it's a big number. The word Google is also related to something very big.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something to the Google or something. There's a term for it. Yeah,
Google Plus.
yeah, probably that. So the stars is the lamed reaching up and the kaf coming down is into Eretz. Now above Shamayim, what do you think is above Shamayim?
Wrong.
That's basically where Yahweh,
God's realm.
yeah, that's where Yahweh is. So we're going to touch on those 4 layers, and I found something fascinating in the promise given to Abraham. It confirms the lake of fire. Very interesting. We're going to look at that as well. That we looked at previously, which is a haven or a it was the harbor or a
Harbour.
safe
Safe haven.
safe haven at the seashore, with the ocean being connected to a lake. Idea of the ocean linking to the darkness, which is Sheol. So there's something I found that's very interesting. Anyway, Lech Lechah means go forth, and this parashah is the third one, so we are going to look at the letter Gimel. I think we're going to do the letter Gimel first, just for context. And interestingly enough, it connects to this Torah portion. Not because I wanted to make it connect, it just connected automatically. Storyline, the call of Abram and Sarai in Egypt, Abram and Lot separate, Lot's captivity and rescue, Abram blessed by Melchizedek, the covenant with Abram, birth of Ishmael, and the sign of the covenant.
But, sorry, can you just speak a little bit louder? I can't hear you.
You want to sit here?
No.
I can't because...
Just a little bit louder.
okay, I will.
Please.
All right, let's jump to the Gematria first. Now this is the letter Gimel. Letter Gimel is the number 3, so it's the Gematria of 3 as well, because in Hebrew the letter is the number as well. Now the Gimel is, you can write it out and pronounce it Gamal, and that's translated as camel. That's why Gimel represents a camel. Now a camel gives you the idea of movement and to carry something from one point to another, specifically through the wilderness or through a desert or through a very difficult environment. They are equipped to do that. They are created to do that. Now, the Gimel is similar to the concept of energy, where we are in the world of duality between the two poles of whether it's negative, positive, hot, cold, north, south. There's an energy field that exists between opposites. Now, opposites, we can also call that opposing forces, and Hasatan, the opposer, exists within this world of duality, and he's called the opposer. So he's part of the opposing forces. But he's the one that opposes Yahweh, so he creates the energy between the realm of Hoshek, the darkness, kingdom of darkness, and the kingdom of the north, which is the kingdom of Yahweh. And that energy field exists there because of that. Now, the energy has the purpose and the function to perform work, or to move something from one place to another. Whether it's a field, whether it's a particle, whether it's an electron, whatever, it will be moved due to the opposing forces and the energy. And that energy or work that's been performed, that is what the Gimel is. So we had the Aleph, which comes from Yahweh. It's Yahweh's essence. And from the Aleph, you can create a little tent. And the tent is the concept of the letter Bet, or the house, or the space in which Yahweh created everything. And then within the space, we looked at the letter Bet, which is the number 2, which connects to the world of duality. So this space is a space of duality, and within duality, we've got opposing forces, and we have now the Gimel that can move things from one place to another within the space of the letter Bet. So the one is flowing onto the other, and they all have a purpose. Now the Gimel is constructed by 2 other letters, the letter Vav and the letter Yod. But the letter Yod is at the bottom of the Vav. Vav means man, Yod means hand. So it's like a hand is supporting the foot in order to support the walk of the person. The Yod is also a symbol of Yahweh's unseen hand, and it is his spirit that helps us in our walk. And that's where that comes from. The concept where Yeshua said, I'm going away, I'm going to send the Spirit, who is the helper. That's the Gimel. That's the symbol of that. The previous symbols we had for the Spirit of Yahweh is the Shin, which is the fire, the tongues of fire that come from heaven, which is also the light and the purification part of Yahweh's Spirit. And then you have the letter Hay, which is the sound of breath, which is the word ruach, which is Yahweh's spirit or breath of life that was breathed into Adam. So now we have the third letter that represents the spirit of Yahweh, which is the helper. And this helper helps us to perform an action. And because we are in the kingdom, we are supposed to carry the yoke, plow the ground, and all that. The helper will help us to do that. The Gimel is also the idea of running and returning. It's a concept of breathing in and out. It's also the concept of blood flowing through your system of the body, performing the work of moving the oxygen through your system. It's also the concept of all the things that move within cycles which pertain to the seasons, the sun, the moon, and the stars. All the movements, all the energy that comes from Yahweh is manifested through the Gimel, which is his spirit. So he's maintaining and sustaining everything, including man, as well as his whole creation, through the power of his spirit, or the energy of his spirit. Gimel is the number 3. Number 3 means covenant, and that's our connection to Abraham, because Yahweh cut a covenant with Abraham. Gimel number 3 means covenant. The gematria of number 3 means freshness, fresh green shoots, fruit, fresh young greenery, father of an individual. Now we make the connection between Yahweh's spirit and the fruit of the spirit. And green things are something that can sprout or grow, and the life essence or the life energy that make that happen. And that spark that was given to Adam when he breathed into him with his ruach is now the Gimel force that sustains his whole system. Gimel is made up of the letters Vav Yod that adds up to the number 16, which makes the word Hayah. Now Hayah is the part of Yahweh's name, and Hayah means to exist, to come to pass, to become, to be committed and desire. Now that's the name that Yahweh gave Moshe. He said Hayah, Asher, Hayah. That word Hayah is connected to his name when you add the letter Yod, or the unseen hand. So now we have the unseen hand in the makeup of the letter Gimel, but it's also the support of the Spirit that help you, like a camel, help you to travel through the wilderness. And guess who else traveled through the wilderness?
Us.
Abraham. He left his house, traveled through the wilderness. There was a famine. He went to Egypt, then he left again. He was a sojourner. He was a traveler. He was someone who needed a camel to move from one place to another. And Yahweh directed his walk, gave him direction, gave him vision for him to go wherever he needed him to go. Right, so here's a summary of all the 4 symbols of Yahweh's Spirit. The Hay is the breath of light on light. That's called by Paul the Spirit of Truth. Shin is fire. That's the essence of the anointing, the fire coming on the heads of the people. Yod is the unseen hand, or the helper. And then Gimel is the one that supports and help you to carry. The Yod and the Gimel are similar in meaning. Now the Gimel, if you write it out and you place the letters on a menorah pattern, Gimel, if you write it out, is Gimel Mem Lamed. So now we see a Lamed that's reaching up, and we see the Gimel on the right and the Mem in the middle. Now the right side, the Gimel, is on the spiritual is right. That means it's the Spirit of Yahweh that's the helper. On the left you have the Lamed, which is the physical. That reached into the physical was the teacher, the shepherd, which is Mashiach, and who came from the seed of Abraham. That's the other connection to Abraham. The Mem in the middle is the most important one. That's the middle branch, and that represents the word of Yahweh, where everything is situated around the world, a word, and built upon the word. And that also connects to this week's Parashah, where the covenant cut with Abraham resulted in the giving of the Torah later on through Moses, and they're all interconnected. Gamal or Gimel, if you write it out, adds up to number 73. That means dark circuit district. Now, in just saying that, there's a first time of darkness. Then you get this idea of cycles. It's a district, so it's a place or a space that you cycle through, where the cycles go through. And then we see drunkards, which is to do with a fallen state, deal fully with recompense, grinding mill, and to scrape. So that's a purification of the darkness. And then we see an attribute of Abraham, which is to ask, to seek, to request, to desire, to pray, to make petition, and Yahweh hears. Now, Abraham was not someone that was chosen by a lottery. I was here, any, mini, money, mo, I'll pick Abraham. No, Abraham was searching for this God. And then Yahweh introduced himself to him. So that made him unique. And that's why I think he's the father of faith, because he was the one who desired to know the unseen God. Yes.
And he probably had a reason, being that his father was an idol maker.
Yes.
He saw where the source of these idols come from and realized they had no power.
Yeah, it's just stone. It's just ornament. It's dead. Yeah. So he asked the right question, and he desired to know the answer. And that's why all of us sit here today, because we didn't just accept what was being fed to us through religion. We asked questions, and we wanted to know. Whenever there's conflict or confusion, whatever, you just keep on asking the right question, and Yahweh will come down, just like he did with Abraham, and introduce himself to you. And then he will reveal himself to you. And that's why we get a lot of revelation, because we've got the hearts of Abraham, seeking and desiring the truth constantly. All right. Then we see Yahweh hears, and then we see a sickle moving away, refuge, flee, protection, camel wrap, fold up, moving back or returning. So that's the idea of the concept of Egypt, the famine, and then through a Passover, Moses leaving Egypt, going through the wilderness. So that's the concept of that cycle, where there will be a cleansing happening, and part of that cleansing, when it happens, that's what we define as judgment, or that separation process. And now we see where the camel comes into play, and it has to do with returning or moving back. Now Yahweh gave the land to Abraham, then Israel traveled through the wilderness, and then they returned to the land that was given to their father Abraham, which was possession, which is one of the three things Yahweh promised Abraham as part of the covenant. What do you think are the three things that were part of the covenant promises? We've got the stars and the sand. There was the land. So the generations is the offspring. That's people. The land is the place. Should we talk about what's the third one?
The nations.
No, that's also people. That's generation. That's number 2. What's the first one? The most important one.
Himself, he gave him.
I am your exceedingly great reward. You get me. That's the most important promise. As a result of following the covenant, you will get Yahweh. You will be part of the nations, and you will inherit the land or live in the same place where he is and see him face to face. That's a covenant in a nutshell.
In every place where he speaks, it says, if you return back to me and follow my Torah and my covenant, then I will turn to you. So the first priority of mankind should directly be Yah first, everything else second. Nothing comes before him. Anything else comes before him, it's the form of an idol that man is worshipping something else rather than Yahweh.
Yeah. And also prior to that is Abraham seeking Yahweh, because he was used to idols. And then Yahweh turned to him.
Seek ye first
It's
the
the
kingdom, kingdom will seek
kingdom.
ye, and everything else will be added unto you.
And this is the concept of the heart of Abraham. He was the one who sought Yahweh first.
It's interesting that in the picture of the camel, the Gimel, it being the Holy Spirit, that when the man decides to go on the journey, the camel actually has to bends down so that he can,
Yeah.
he bends to our level so that we can get on and make the journey.
Yeah, he come and meet you at your level, so you can jump on.
Good thinking, Sarah.
What's interesting when you look at what we're learning now, you see that the plan of Yahweh has been set in motion and is leading people all the time through what He's created, through the men He's put in position. He's trying to bring people to the realization they've got to come back to Him. There's a plan that He's set in motion. It's not just, it'll work itself out. No. There is a specific tapestry, and the pieces fitting to that tapestry in perfect harmony.
According to his plan,
According to
his
His
purpose. Yeah. Right. Any other thoughts about Gimel?
Just a question, why has it got the crown on the top?
Or the Gimel?
Yeah, I just know in the letters of the one before, it's
Almost looks like design.
That one?
Like the same as the shin.
Yeah, the Nun Sefit's got it. Which other letters got it?
Zion or I?
Yeah, the Zion's got it. That's just a crowned letter. It's a letter of authority, I think.
Yeah, it looks like that, doesn't it?
authority, kingship.
Yeah. And if you follow the Aleph-Bet, it's Aleph-Bet Gimel Dalet. Dalet is the next letter, and Dalet means door or opening or doorway or entry point. Or you move from one stage to another, from one level to another. And that's the purpose of the camel, is to carry you up to the door, and then you can enter into that door with the help of the camel. All right.
Philip, when you look at that, there's a lot of meaning in it when you see the crown on the top. Because a camel is an animal that bears a weight. He's what they call it?
Burden bearer.
Burden bearer. He carries the weight. When you look at the camel, whenever you see the camel, he's got some huge amount of tent on top of him. It's
Hanging
very
off the
descriptive.
sides and on top,
And regardless of what it is, he carries that. He's there. In one respect, you could say, we are the burden of Yahweh sitting on top of this guy, and he's carrying us all the time.
Yeah. And the letter that's the closest in appearance to Gimel is the letter Lamed, because of the neck. If you look at that Lamed, and Yeshua said it in the context that he will teach you everything. So your Gimel is also a Lamed, or your teacher.
And again, cast your burdens upon me.
Because I'm a camel, I'm the spirit, I can carry it. Heavy load. And Yeshua carrying his stake, that's him representing the Gimel. So he can open up the Dalet through that work. Lots and lots of analogies. Just to recap, we are going to continue with our storyline. In Bereshit, we had the concept of the waters of the deep, the earth, which is the sand, which connects to Abraham's promise, and the word Eretz. And then we had the Spirit of Yahweh moving across that. And then we have Shamayim later on with the separation of the waters, which is the next thing. Last week in the Aleph-Bet, we looked at the two kingdoms, the kingdom of Eretz and the kingdom of Shamayim, and the separation of the two. And that's basically the starting point is the place of darkness. And the darkness came into being as a result of the Nafal. Now, the Nafal is just a fallen state. That's a vulnerability that was a result of perfection without maturity. So Yahweh made us so perfect in His image in order to perform choice or execute choice because of free will. That was our weakness as well. The thing that made us the closest to Him was the thing that caused us to fall because of a lack of maturity. And hence the purpose of the cycles. Because when you're a baby, you're born, you need to learn to crawl, then you go through the next stage, then you need to walk, then you can run. But when you run, you fall, and then you're back on your knees again. Then you learn to stand up again, and learn to walk, and learn to fall again, or run again before you fall. So it's the cycles of Nafal, and every one of us has these cycles in our lives. You get up, stand up, now I'm righteous, I'm upright, I walk, and the word says, you that think that you stand, watch out that you don't fall. And then you fall. That's a Nafal. And it's normally the pride, the arrogance, or the immaturity that cause us to be tripped up because of the nature and the image that we have, that we can't control it. It's like buying the most powerful motorcycle. Don't know how to drive it. I'll get on it. You just open it up and it throw you off. And there it goes, you know. You need to learn to manage the power. Now Yahweh built into every one of us so much power because we're in His image. We need to go through these cycles in order to learn how to control this power. And as we grow up, we accept Messiah, then we get His Spirit. Now it's when we receive the Spirit when we get that extra power. But now we have the foundation of Messiah, foundation of Torah. Now we know how to do it. If you don't have the foundation of Torah, that power turns to wildfire, strange fire. It's dangerous. It can destroy you. If you can't control the power, you need the foundation of Torah in order to control the power of the Spirit. Otherwise, it will throw you off. All right, so I just want to lay the foundation here of the concept of Nafal and the low state of duality. And this one is just quickly thinking about Gibor, of which Nimrod was a Gibor, and that flowed into the next one. Not that one, this one. No, not that one, this one. Which is the concept of Rephaim. Now we're going to meet our Rephaim again today. And the Rephaim, what we discussed last week, is based on their name, and the meaning thereof is shades, shadows, dead, and spirits, as well as giants. And these Rephaim, we connected to the realm of the waters of the deep. And the concept of the spirits that come out of that realm into our realm, but manifest through a person. That's spiritual possession of an entity that is of evil nature, that can now do the evil within the world. And the constant Nafal, there was about 3 Nafals before a Rephaim could manifest. So you have to really make an effort to fall in order to manifest these things in your life. And I think Aristotle and those people deliberately did things explicitly to get this power manifested in them. So they didn't go the route, I want Yahweh's Spirit, where the ultimate power is. I want a Rephaim spirit, which is a counterfeit of the real, to manifest through me, because that will feed my nefesh state. I don't want to become a neshama. I want to be an animal state. I just want to go for power and glory. And that's what Nimrod depicted, that he was in the face of Yahweh, a rebel. And he was a very powerful hunter. And he was seen as a king. And then this one, just the concept of every cycle's end is a new cycle's beginning, and they share the same thing. In this case, it's the concept of separation. In judgment, there's separation. In creation, there's separation. and the one flow into the other, and that's how the cycles connect. One cycle flow into the other, sharing the same building blocks. So when we see judgment coming, we also know that creation coming, a new cycle of creation, a new cycle of restoration. This is Yetzer Hara. That is what Ish Adamah, which is Noach, brought into the new cycle. He was called a man of the earth, a man of the kingdom of Eretz, which is another term for someone who is a neshama. He hasn't been restored back to a nefesh. And because of his state, he created something that released or revealed his nakedness that caused the fall of someone else, and then the next generation it manifested. So that is what he brought into that new creation cycle, if you like. And that is what we still struggle with. It's the Yetzer Hara in the form of Ish Adamah. So Yahweh decided, and that's what we discussed last week as well, to deal with giants, Gibor, and we found within Gibor the concept of waters. That's the only thing that can destroy this. That's found within the problem. The solution is found within. And Yahweh made a covenant and said, I will no longer destroy the earth with water, thinking in the future there will be Gibor, but I won't do that because that's not the real solution to the problem. I'm going to create another medium similar to water that will ultimately destroy the Gibor. And that's the water of the word. And that's where Abram comes into play. The covenant is the starting point of creating the medium of water that will withstand and overthrow the power of the Gibor, which is a result of the constant nafal of Ish Adamah, or the men of the earth.
We had a discussion, was it last night or yesterday morning, when we talked about the giants in our lives. And the only way you can get, and I mean, we all have them, and we're all guilty of sin and what, but the only way, and we've got testimonies of that, when we said, you wash yourself with the water of the word, keep yourself busy with Torah, and that changes man.
If you have a giant in your life, the worst sin ever, the only thing that can destroy that is Torah. Nothing else. Not casting out of demons, not bowing down and praying 7 times a day. Only the water of the word, the Torah, in your
Because
life.
that's the manual for life, isn't it?
That is the
how to walk.
Yeah. Very, very powerful. And people reject it.
I'm just thinking, entertaining this concept is that Torah works on an unconscious level. It's almost like your conscious mind takes it in. It's a bit like, years ago I learned how to touch type by doing 15 minutes per day, and then I went to a period where I couldn't do the 15 minutes per day, and a few weeks later came back and my speed had increased without any practice whatsoever. So I see that Torah is the same thing. You take it in, and consciously take it in, but it operates within you in an unconscious level and brings about changes that manifest down the
Because
track.
it's always in the back of your mind. You know, even if you go to the shops or whatever, I'm like that even when I buy clothes. It's in the back of my mind. Torah, you know, don't mix. Do this, do that.
Forgive, do this, no hold grudges, whatever.
Philip, you see, it's a hara. If you go back, Lashon hara is leprosy.
Oh yes, yes.
So when you look at that, it's a fallen state. That normally
Leprosy is a result of this.
Exactly. Yeah. That came when people stepped out of line. These things came upon them. When they weren't walking according to the statutes of Yahweh, the Lashon Hara came upon them.
The Lashon Hara is speaking evil.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
The tongue.
Yeah. So that's the seed that came into this new cycle of 8 souls that has been corrupted. And then manifested in Nimrod, which was one of the worst blatant rebels that got all the people around his vision and plan in order to build another Lamed to get to the higher level through another means. And that's what the occult or magic and those things are all about. They want to use the power of the spiritual but take Yahweh out of the equation.
That's like the thief that climbs over the sheepfold wall rather than entering through the door.
Yeah, and they've got the appearance of sheep, but they're wolves because they hide in plain sight. They've got the language, the lingo, all of that sounds fine, but their actions will tell you different. All right, that's just for a baseline. Let's get into it. Lech Lechah. Other way to translate this is get yourself out. It's sort of an urgency to that. You read about that in Revelation. Get out of her, my people. Same urgency to get out. With Abraham, Sodom and Gomorrah, get yourself out of Sodom and Gomorrah. It's an urgency because there's a separation cycle that is coming, and you are now in the time of preparation to prepare for the next cycle, which will end in a judgment or separation before the rest of the creation cycle. And it's all about preparation. It's always about preparation. And even so with Moses. So this week starts with Lech Lechah. Get yourself out. Go for yourself. Go to yourself. Now that points inwards as well. So when Moses walked, he had to contemplate and also think about himself and be refined while he was traveling through the wilderness. Abram was someone who Yahweh used in order to change the Ish Adamah into the higher level, a higher state. And part of being changed, you can accept Yeshua in Egypt, but you have to leave Egypt. In the same way, Abraham accepted Yahweh as the unseen God. Then Yahweh asked him, you need to go. What will happen if you stayed? It's the same with staying in Egypt. The plagues will hit you. You can't stay. You have to leave because plagues are coming. Same urgency for Babylon. You can't accept Yeshua or whatever in Babylon. You have to leave the system. You have to leave the way and the thinking of those people in order to receive the blessing of being transformed from a fallen state into a higher state. Lech Lechah comes from the word Yalak, Yod Lamed Kaf. That means to follow, to bring, to carry, to go, to depart, and to move away. So in saying this, we think about Abraham. If Yahweh told him to get out, you need to go somewhere, he was actually given something to take with him. He was like a messenger, and he had to deliver this to the place where he was going. And that happened later on through Moses. And also it happened on a prophetic level through his seed. What he carried with him manifested as Mashiach later on. And then he brought something of value from the spiritual through the Lamed into the physical and even down to Sheol. That's how low Yeshua went to bring the most valuable thing into the lowest part of the world of duality. Now, all of this is built around a covenant. Yahweh made a covenant as the starting point. So we're going to, in a couple of slides, look at detail on the covenant, at the covenant Yahweh cut with Abraham. Now, Lech Lechah, if you just look at the first part of Lech Lechah, the Lamed Kaf, Lech, it's a gematria of 50. That means red earth, born, sea, and nations. Baal is exalted, Baal is husband, a garment, mixed wine, alcohol, unclean, impure, to linger, anger, tarry, wait, and the land. So the majority of these meanings are negative and has to do with the fallen state, which is the red earth, the Ish Adamah. Also the concept of the sea, the nations, and the dark waters. Also the concept of idol worship, where Baal is exalted, Baal is my husband. Baal can also be translated as Lord. If you see someone as your master or something as your master, even if it's a little statue, that's what this means. And that's where Abraham grew up, in a house where they had idol worship, where Baal was their master. And they exalted all the different Baals of rain and fertility and whatever, how many they had. And then we see Noah there with alcohol that lead to unclean and impure behavior. And then Yahweh got angry and he destroyed the earth with the flood. And the second time around, he will be patient and wait in order to bring people into this land, which is part of the covenant promise. So within this first word, Yalak, there's so many touching points from creation to Noah and also into Abraham. If you add the other Lech or the Lechah, it's a gematria of 100. That means son of strength, yoke. Use the right hand, ransom. So just there I see the Messiah, just in that. Then Yahweh knows, Yahweh has adorned, he will establish hedge or protection, throat or to speak, beauty stunning, to leap, to dance, to spring. He will reign, who is like Elohim. So it's like becoming into the likeness of Elohim from a fallen state through the work of the Son of Strength, the one who will carry the yoke and the one who is called the right hand of Yahweh. He will become the ransom, or he will pay the price so that we can be beautified. He's also the one who reestablished the throat, or the area of speaking, to speak his Torah. That's part of the creation process. And that creation process will beautify those who sit under that teaching. So all of these things are still in line, and you can see within the words that Yahweh gave him, the commandment, Lech Lechah, we see his seed, the Messiah, we see the fallen state, we see the outcome and the solution to the problem, all within those two words, which are the same words, by the way. And Abraham is now carrying this message, he's carrying the seed, and he's now equipped to start the journey which Yahweh initiated with him and that one commandment. So it shows that he can use so little things, so start with so small thing, and from that can create something so big, creating something out of next to nothing. All he needs is someone that can listen to one simple commandment, and then all of this can happen from that. And that's the power that's locked into every single one of us. Just be obedient to a small commandment, and all this potential can be come from that, obeying of that one commandment.
It's interesting that urgency to go is there in the Passover. You know,
Yes.
to get out of Egypt, and then you mentioned Lot, and then Revelation, and then when Yeshua said, you know, when you see this happening, don't even go on the rooftop, just get out.
Yeah,
The
just
same,
go.
it's all about Messiah, it's all woven in just obeying, getting out.
So that's a message to us. When we see the signs, we are convinced that these are the prophetic signs. We need to Lech Lechah in that moment. You don't have to sit and waver and wonder and then this and that. No, I first want to do this, I first want to go there and do that. No, you need to take your stuff and move immediately. So obedience, you can obey in a delayed way, and miss the point and miss the boat completely. So obedience is all about being timely with your obeying as well. Because if you don't obey in the right time frame, you will be part of that destruction cycle and be consumed by that if you don't watch it. And that's the storyline with Lot and his wife looking back. She just wanted, she had a thought and just acted on it, and then she was stuck. Yeah. All right, next one. Carry the yoke of Abram. Get yourself out is the Hebrew phrase Lech Lechah. We already touched on this. It means to walk, to go, to depart, to follow, to lead, to carry, and to bring. Within these words, we see that there's leadership in there. There's also following direction from someone higher, and to carry something that you bring to someone. So that's all encapsulated in the word Yalak that is in that word. Now, Yalak has the gematria of 60. That means wandering, testing, to examine, to prove, yoke, to prevail, to overcome, vision, treasure, and majesty. So this is the pointing inward. Go to yourself, go inward. You need to examine yourself. You need to prove yourself while you're carrying this yoke or these difficult circumstances that you're in. And you need to overcome that. And then you'll see the vision Yahweh has for you, going through this tough time. And He will unleash His treasure, or the gems that you will get from the situation, and see His majesty in every single situation. So you guys went through this tough time recently. And I think this is very applicable to your lives.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
So you are wondering where you are going. And you are being tested and proven, and you need to still examine yourself. Checking against the word, picking what's in here, weighing it up, and then refining yourself and prevail against what is not in Scripture. And then Yahweh will switch on the light. You will see the outcome, or you'll see Him. You'll see something that you need to see, because there's purpose behind this. Is to open up the eyes and to see. We're going to analyze Abraham's name, and this concept of sight is within his name as well, because he went through this first. You are not alone. Your father Abraham had exactly the same experience. He left. He wanted to know where to go.
So he's immersed in pagan culture, which has a multiplicity of gods, but he sees and seeks after the one God, the God of all, over all.
Yeah.
But he has to have that inner, what would you call it? It's the opposite of the Yetzirah.
It's to start to see the revelation,
the spark, the
the
divine
insights.
spark.
Yeah. But when you look at these challenges in his life, he nearly lost his wife twice. Maybe lost his own life if he did the wrong thing. And he basically sort of did the wrong thing anyway, but Yahweh saved him regardless.
The other thing is, he was told to leave his family and go on to Canaan.
And that's very lonely.
But he parks somewhere else with his family on the way. And,
Yeah.
So he's not this squeaky clean character.
No, he started off as a Yetzer Hara, Ish Adamah person. Before he became Abraham. So, I already said all of that. Related to Yalak is the word Halak. That's in the middle there. That means to walk, to behave, the self. Continually depart, to enter, to follow, forward, to get, to go, greater, grow, lead, march. And that's a concept of, if you read the the meanings, it seems like you're starting just to obey. I'm just going, I'm just walking. And as you walk, you start to march. So you're getting equipped to be like a soldier. You go with purpose now. You've got a destiny and a mission, and you've got vision of why you're going. So it's not just, I'll just follow blindly, and that's when you start murmuring, when you have no vision. So it's all about the opening of the eye when you follow Yahweh. So you can follow his lead and know what he entailed for you. And the children of Israel were blind. They didn't know where they were going. And that's why they were looking back and trying to go back to Egypt, because that was their vision. Just want my flesh fed and have comfort. So halak is also the concept of halakha. That means your walk, the way you conduct yourself. And our halakha, we read about in the Torah. That's the way we conduct our walk. And that's the support of the yod and the vav, which is the gimel. Halak is gematria 55. So we had 50, we have 60, we've got 55 and 100. So they're all sort of clustered in the same. So 55 means south country or kingdom, south, consumption, annihilation, end, slip, fail, to be ended, uncleanness, to steal, Edomite, sickness, disease, humpbacked or crookbacked, is another term.
You said crook-baked.
No, it's actually crookbacked, not crookbaked. Not being upright or righteous. So all of those meanings points back to the kingdom of the south, and the outcome of that is the total annihilation of that, where that will be consumed and destroyed and separated from Yahweh's people. If you go out, if you leave that, and we see that with Sodom and Gomorrah, we saw that with the plagues of Egypt. It's all about leaving in order not to be consumed by those things that are designed to destroy what is evil. Then we see traveler, to go out, to walk, skin bottle, carry away, bar of a yoke. That's what Yeshua carried, and journey. Now that's what this life is all about. We come from the kingdom of the south. We are in a place of uncleanness, in a state of leprosy, and we're just wandering there and don't know which way to go. But when Yahweh calls us, we are now on a journey, walking in a direction. Now the word direction is the word derek. That's where we get the word direction from, probably. And direction is linked to pointing to a destination, like reading a map. And the Torah helps us to have a direction to point to, a direction to walk towards, where halakha is the way you walk in the direction that's been pointing to, and both get the information from the Torah. So it's not only about we're going to the promised land, let's go, but I act like a pagan on the way, ranting, raving, and stabbing each other to death, and carrying on, murmuring, whatever. No. You need the halakha while you walk in that direction. Otherwise, I'm going to change your direction into a circle. And you're going to go a couple of cycles until your halakha is sorted, and then I'll give you another direction, which is not a circle, that point to a destination point. So it's all about sorting ourselves out.
And the process is Lech Lechah is out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
So Ur of the Chaldees, prosperous family business, he could have settled there very easily.
Yeah, selling idols.
Then he moves to, where's the next point on the road where they settle for a while?
Yeah.
Comfortable life.
I think he went to Canaan.
No, not first. Or did he go to
Haran till his
Haran?
till his father died.
Yeah,
He goes to Haran, parks there for
Yeah.
a while, comfortable,
Yeah.
and then,
Lech Lechah.
well, yeah, gets to Canaan, but that's not comfortable because there's a drought there. So he overshoots and goes to Egypt. So it takes a while. Then he makes the decision not to stay on the plains with Sodom and Gomorrah, but to take the high place, leaving behind Lot. So then he has to come back to God, come out of the...
So he spiritually matured. And he was elevated in relation to Lot, who was still comfortable. So there's a difference between glamping and camping. So Abraham was camping and Lot was glamping.
But in the whole thing, when you look at this, Lot was actually quite a hindrance to Abraham all the time. And when Abraham had a hard time when he was in Egypt, there was a story with his wife. Everywhere he went, the enemy was on his heels all the time.
Yeah.
But Yahweh blessed him.
Yeah.
Just to think, if he hadn't taken Lot with him, which God said, leave behind your family, if he hadn't taken Lot with him, his life would have been a whole lot better, wouldn't it?
Yeah. He had this added dynamic that he had to deal with. Now the rest of the meanings of 55 is man of Adar. Now I checked it out in scripture, that refers to Judah, the tribe of Judah. Because Adar, I think, is the place where Judah inherited land or something like that. So the man of Adar can also be translated as the man from Judah, or the lion of Judah, someone that comes from Judah, which is connected to Abraham's seed, the one who comes from Judah. And then desire, Gebim, means cisterns, or to return of the remnant. So that's a multitude of people returning to the land. And then to be able to accomplish, to finish, and bride. So the previous one we had the word land, which is part of the covenant promise, and now we have bride, which is part of the covenant promise. And this bride is a remnant that is returning because of the man of Adar, the man of Judah, the one who comes from the seed of Abraham. And they have a journey through the wilderness, leaving the south country, the place of fallenness, the place of sin, where the people are humpbacked and crookbacked. So within the walk halakha, within the word yalak, and within the word lech, and also Lech Lechah, which are all related to one simple commandment Yahweh gave Abraham, we get all this information, prophetic information of the covenant embedded within that one commandment. And the covenant promises embedded in that one simple commandment, which is one word repeated twice. That means it's very, very important. Isn't that fascinating? Now, if you think about how powerful Yahweh's word is, I think the word Lech Lechah, when he told that to Abraham, he downloaded the fullness of the revelation of those two words and that commandment within Abraham. And that was his power to go on that journey. That gave him the essence to move on. Now we're going to shift gears a bit, go back to Bereshit. And the reason we're going back to Bereshit, because we find Abraham's name in Genesis 2 verse 4. But before I get there, I just want to give context on the importance of studying Abraham. Now there's 11 chapters from Genesis to the Tower of Babel, and the life of Abraham is 12 chapters. So the whole creation of humanity, the fall of humanity, the judgment of humanity, and the rebellion of humanity that spiked up again to the Tower of Babel is less content than the life of Abraham. Weighing it up, it means that we need to study the life of Abraham to outweigh what is on the left, that started with darkness, void, emptiness. that ended with the Tower of Babel, which is a theme of Revelation as well. And in order to outweigh the next coming Tower of Babel, which we are part of, as well as the darkness and the voidness of the kingdom of darkness that is currently rampant around us, we need to be like Abraham. That is the solution to this problem we're facing now. We need to study Abraham, become like Abraham, have the heart of Abraham, be prompt like Abraham, do the things like Abraham did, be righteous like Abraham, because we are children of our father Abraham. That's why Yeshua used Abraham as our father and pointed us back to him. He is the righteous one. There's 12 chapters about someone that's righteous. If you want to be righteous, study those 12 chapters and you'll be okay. And do as he did. So it's easy to say, what will Jesus do? I will say, what will Abraham do? Because Abraham, halakha, the footsteps of Mashiach, in a practical sense, elaborated over 12 chapters. There's more information about that, about the physical things that Yeshua did. He revealed himself as Mashiach in the New Testament, not as much as what to do practically in life, what to do when life challenges. Yes, there's some glimpses of that, but there's much more information on Abraham. I'm not saying that Yeshua is less important. No, he's the highest importance because he's higher than Abraham, because he's the one that ultimately fulfilled everything Abraham started. So he's the climax and Abraham's the shadow, only the beginning, the small. But Abraham, within the small, we can learn about the large, the character of Mashiach as well, which is applicable to us because we need to become like Mashiach. Abraham is the means to study that. How do I do that practically? And to walk in his footsteps. So that's an interesting concept. And how many people study Abraham?
I've often thought, he's called the father of faith. But when you really look at his life, there's probably more instances where he doesn't have faith than instances where he does have faith.
Yeah, but faith, we think about faith, I think, from the wrong perspective. If you think about faith, I know a truth. I will stand on the truth no matter what. That's a interpretation. Being faithful means whenever I fall, I will stand up again and be faithful to continue regardless of my weakness. That's Abraham.
So
he wasn't perfect.
Father of the faithful,
yes,
rather than the father of faith.
He was the father of endurance, the father of obedience regardless of his weaknesses.
He was faithful in what he believed.
He was faithful in spite of his own self. So he trusted Yahweh more than he trusted his own abilities. And Paul said the same thing. What do I do? Things I do, and I do, I don't. Same thing. In spite of your weakness, you still need to be faithful. And Paul was like that. Abraham was only human, just like us, and that makes him a very good example because none of us are perfect. But when you fall, are you going to stay down? You're going to get up and still follow. And still examining yourself, still carrying the yoke, bringing the message, kicking and screaming the best of your abilities to deliver that message with which Yahweh equipped you to, so you can hand it over to them for their benefit, so that all the families of the earth can be blessed through your efforts.
The interesting with Abraham's life too is that when you look how the enemy followed him the whole time. Number one, Lot, the child that Lot caused him. Then when he goes to Egypt, Pharaoh gives his daughter as a slave girl, saying she'd better be Abraham's slave than somebody's, to be somebody else's wife. That, in turn, becomes a thorn in his flesh. Firstly to Sarah, and then to Abraham, then later on, with the birth of that child, who was a stubborn mule, as the prophecy was saying. So So really when you think that the enemy constantly was at his heels, ready to try and take him down. Like Christ was tempted, Abraham was really pushed to his limits with certain things like that. Because it became a problem with Abraham when Sarah threw Hagar out after that, after the conception of the child. There was a big story there. So when you look at it, the enemy was always there to try and bring him down.
Yeah. He's the opposer. So when there's a plan or a vision, he will come and bring the opposite.
That's right.
The counterfeit. To give you the choice. The tree of good and evil. The opposing forces. So from last week, we looked at the 6 Alephs that we read in Genesis 1 verse 1 to 3. Well, that was the week before, was it? And we looked at the first 2,000 years of darkness, which was the first 11 chapters. And then we have the next 2,000 years, which is the 2,000 years of speaking that started with Abraham, that included Moshe, where the throat, where the vocal cords were restored. And now Yahweh is still creating. It's still the same creation words that he spoke in the beginning, that he's speaking through Abraham and through Moshe, as captured in the Torah. The Torah contains the creation words to finish the creation of Adam, or to restore Ish Adamah back into Adam, which is the Neshama version, not the Nefesh, which is Adam and Chava. So the Torah is designed to restore the initial blueprint of what he had entailed for man and mankind in the garden, being echad with him. And that's the purpose of the Torah. And the Torah started, or the seed of the Torah is this covenant that he cut with Abraham. And the first part of this Torah are the words Lech Lechah. The first commandment of the Torah is Lech Lechah. Get yourself out, obey immediately, and follow me. That's what Yeshua told the fishermen. Leave your nets, Lech Lechah. Get yourself out, follow me. Same message, same calling. First words of the Torah. All right. My statement, Abraham, is found in Genesis 2 verse 4 that says, "This is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens." Now there's no Abraham there. So what's happening? It's in the word Baram, which is encircled there, which is the phrase Hashamayim Ha'eretz Bi Baram. Now the word Bi Baram has a small letter Hey, which is referred to as a jot and tittles. That's a jot, something that is small, like a letter yod, and that draws your attention into that text. What does that mean? So when you take that word, you separate the bet and you reshuffle the letters of Bi Baram, you get Bi Avraham, which means for Abraham. And if you retranslate that, it reads, "This is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created for Abraham." So the heavens and the earth were created for Abraham, for Abraham's benefit. Abraham was Yahweh's friend. Now I can exchange that with the word Adam, which is the pre-fallen Adam, is the same as Abraham. They connect on that same level. So just like Yahweh created everything for Adam, in the same way Yahweh is creating everything for Abraham and Abraham's descendants, those who are now coming into the covenant and will be restored back to Adam. It's created for them. And that's what this passage means. It's a message of restoration through the covenant and the man who were obedient and followed Yahweh's first commandment, so the covenant can be established through him, and the creation process can continue of Ish Adamah back into Adam. So that creation is a recreation or restoration process that's happening through this covenant. Isn't that fascinating? Now, we read last time when we stepped off Deuteronomy, it said the heavens and the earth were created in the sight of Israel. It's got the same flavor to it. So in the beginning, Yahweh created everything in the sight of Israel. You might as well say, in the beginning, Yahweh created everything in the sight of Abraham, because it was created for him. After he finished, hey, Abraham, look at what I created for you. Isn't that lovely? In the same way. Because if you link that to our cycles, it makes perfect sense. Abraham is not a person. Abraham is a group name of a righteous people or nation that we also call the bride, which is of the kingdom of Shamayim, which is in the elevated state, who observed the creation of Eretz, the fallen state or the lowest state, which was that next cycle that happened after the first words, let there be light. And then the next cycle starts in the presence of Yisrael, who are from the kingdom of Shamayim, who were elevated in the previous cycle, in that same concept. Cycles within cycles, wheels within wheels, and so forth. 6 Alephs, of course, 6,000 years, and these 6 Alephs also depicts the creation of humanity that will take 6,000 years. And this constant speaking of Torah are the words of creation over Ish Adamah in order to restore them. Any comments on that?
Quite incredible that the verse said that before Abraham was, I am.
Yeah. And now you see Abraham was before creation and he was before that. It's like cycle. Yeah, interesting. Now we're going to look at the covenant, the 3 promises and the 2 kingdoms. That picture there is the animals that were cut open, the dove and the pigeon, and then Yahweh as a furnace walking through the pieces. While Abram was placed into a deep sleep, which is the nafal, similar to a fallen state, he went into a state of darkness and separation. It's the same state Yeshua went into when he went into Sheol, a state of darkness and separation. It's the same state that Adam went into when he was separated into Adam and Chava. So the fall of Adam to become a Nefesh is now being restored through Abram going to the same state to restore the fallen state of Nefesh back into Neshama, but through the covenant. The covenant is the means of restoring Neshama back to Nefesh back to Neshama, or Ish Adamah back to Adam. That's the connection. And they all connect through the deep sleep and darkness that they went into.
Yeah, Philip, just reading it yesterday. We know that Yahweh is the Lord of the Spirit. It talks about the spirits of Yahweh, the lampstand there. That one of those is an oath, a spoken oath, which is like the most powerful thing a person can do is to speak an oath. There, Yahweh made an oath that he would be with Abraham, he would bless it. He spoke it, he can't go back on it.
Yes.
It's been uttered, it's finished, cannot be revoked.
It's eternal.
It's eternal. He spoke an oath for Abraham.
And what's fascinating about the word oath, it's the root word for the number 7. And we're going to see number 7 in this covenant as well. All right, so let's dissect this. All these animals.
But not the birds.
But not the birds, and we're going to see why. And it's very fascinating. I'm not going to read the verse there. It's just that Yahweh said, I'm your shield, your exceedingly great reward. And then the word of Yahweh came to him. And then he made the promise, look towards heaven, look at the stars, number them. And he said to him, so shall your seed be. And he believed Yahweh, and it was counted to him as righteousness. Now this is fascinating here. There was no mention here of the sand of the sea. In the initial covenant, no mention of the sand of the sea, only the stars. The stars are of the Shamayim kind. And this covenant was made to restore them back to Shamayim, not to Eretz, which is the sand. That's just a byproduct. Eventually that will become Shamayim. This is the number 1 plan. It sounds just like when Yahweh said, I will create you in my image and likeness. In my likeness, he created them. The plan is image and likeness. The starting point is image. The plan is Shamayim, and then he had to do Eretz and Shamayim because nobody accepted the first time. And he had to continue in order to fulfill his promise. Now, when you said this is an oath, he cannot change, Yahweh will not stop until everyone is in a Shamayim state. Because that's the oath he made to Abram. Not the dual one, not the dual kingdom one, not the kingdom of duality plus the kingdom of unity. Just the Echad state.
And it's not Yahweh's will that any man should perish.
Yeah, and every knee will bow, every tongue will confess, come hell or high water. Yeah.
We've had the high water.
Yeah, there was high water, and Sheol was there as well, and it's coming again. So based on this covenant, Yahweh made 3 promises. Firstly, he told Abraham, you get me, I'm your reward. I'm your shield. Secondly, he gave Abram a promise of descendants that will be of the realm of Shamayim, or an elevated state of human, which is the actual problem here. He created man, the kingdom of Eretz. I'll make a promise that this kingdom of Eretz, I will make it the kingdom of Shamayim. Every one of them will be up there. And then thirdly, he promised him the land. He said, this land, I'll give you this land to inherit it. So that's the 3 things of the promise. Now, from our previous study, the 2 kingdoms, we know that the kingdom of this world is Eretz, the kingdom that is to come is Shamayim, and the stars point to the second one, or the elevated one. So that's where the Shama will be restored, where man will be back into a Echad state with Yahweh, which is Adam. Now, the second place where this is found, I don't know why this is out of the screen, Genesis 22, verse 15 and 18, where he said, I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars in heavens and as the sand which is on the seashore, and your seed shall pass the gate of their enemies. So Yahweh focus here on the sand of the sea. Sea is another term for nations. Sand links to the ground where Adamah became Adam, when Yahweh formed him and breathed into him. So looking at the separation process, we see another separation process here where the animals were separated. But that's the next slide. Let's just look at the gate of the kingdom of Eretz. Now, Yahweh places the focus on the nations, the separation of man from the earth, and separation of man from this fallen state they're entrapped in under the waters of the deep, which existed in the state of Bereshit. So when Yahweh made the promise, I think he also had in mind the previous cycle, because he used the language of the Bereshit state of Eretz. They were covered by darkness, and the concept of taking Abram into a sleep of darkness, which points back to that state. So his covenant is eternal over all cycles. It's not just for this cycle. It's for the previous one and the one to come, because all exist in the same time from his point of view. Now what's interesting is the language he used there. Your seed shall possess the gate of their enemies, and that is the seed that are the sand which is on the seashore. Now when you think about that, why is he calling it a gate? And you will possess the gate of their enemies. And where are the enemies? So there's a physical gate. On the other side of the gate there's enemies. On this side is your seed. And they will have the authority to open the gate or not. And these are the ones of the kingdom of Eretz. So the people in the fallen state have the authority to open the gate for the enemies to come in. Now where are the enemies from? They are from the sea. Because they're the sand of the sea. What does the ocean represent? Choshech, the waters of darkness, the kingdom of darkness. What did we learn last week from Rephaim? They are shadows, they're spirits, they are of the dead, the realm of the dead. They are giants in the realm of the dead that can be allowed in through a gateway into this realm to manifest into the people in the fallen state of the kingdom of Eretz. Because they nafal, you nafal again, and then the gate open, and then the Rephaim manifest through you.
That's not really all the Illuminati and all of them can have contact, yeah.
Open the sun. It's all about the gate of the enemy. And they have the key to open it or not. When we read about the work of Mashiach, he's got the key of the gates of Sheol. It's the same gate. He can open and close it. He can cast someone out to go back in his name. That's why in his name you can cast out demons, because they will go back through that gate into Sheol, into the jail or the holding place, which is Choshech. So now we see the realm and the spiritual realm and the entities in the spirit, how they work. We've got the two kingdoms, kingdom of darkness in the lower parts, kingdom of heaven, which is the higher parts. I always thought that the spiritual realm is a mix of angels and demons, you know, light and darkness mixed. No, it's not. It's separate. You can't have darkness where Yahweh is. They are separate. The furthest away from the holiest is the worst unholy ones.
The only thing is that the pure angels can operate in the same realm as the fallen angels.
Yes.
But where do you think the battle happens? Where's the battlefield? It's not the heavenlies. It's this state that we're in that has a heaven and a spiritual layer to it. But it's the kingdom of Eretz. And the people of this earth open up the worst enemies that are in jail, open up the gate, please come out, let's be mates, work through me, just give me this, and then they sell their souls for power, and then those things manifest, and then the battle happens on this realm to contain those things, and we have the help from the kingdom of the north, where the prince of Persia was a spiritual entity manifesting through a physical kingdom which they needed to defeat. But they had to defeat the Rephaim of Persia first before they could overcome Persia. So it's a spiritual layer to this world.
This thing is so deep. When you come to think of it, the fallen spirit realm, they cannot operate if they haven't got a body.
Yes.
So whose body do they take over? You see in Revelation where at the end of the millennium, Satan is loosed He goes forth into the world and he deceives the people. In other words, his minions will go with him. They will enter into physical
That's it.
bodies.
And then Gog and Magog happen.
Then
It's not about, hey boys, you want to join me? No. Who of you called me to come and dwell within you so I can manifest in your realm? Come forth. And whoop, in they go.
Philip, when you look at it, what are all these seance meaning? What do they do?
CERN has a seance.
Yeah, they call upon
Yes.
the spirits.
They're opening up the gate.
Better to use the term portal. We understand.
Yeah, portal, gate, same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah.
But we are, that whole understanding that it's a frequency as well. It's not physical. It's not a physical.
It's a spiritual
It's a
technology
spiritual.
where technology linked to the spiritual. That's where we're at
If
now.
you think of it, so what is this whole thing, this whole move now, is to create bodies into which these entities can come, because they've lost the human.
And they want to change the frequency of the bodies
the DNA of the bodies, so they're no longer human.
so they can be indwelled. That's bad. I think that's where all the zombie movies is about. People are walking dead, embodied by Rephaim.
Yes.
That's bad
Sad.
and so sad.
Sad.
The whole push is to be a superhuman,
Yes.
to have these powers that, and this mental ability that you can't possibly have as a human being. But if you connect yourself to the Internet of Things,
And these things are connected to the gates and the portals of
you
Hoshek.
become a superhuman,
Yeah.
meaning you become a...
Through your little Rephaim that's going to manifest through you, you'll have those abilities. Yeah, it's scary actually, but it's interesting.
So you have to fix that seesaw because it's an eyesore.
I fix it in my mind. I don't even see it.
Game at the seesaw.
Sorry, it's seashore.
Oh my God.
So don't worry about that. Now, last time when we looked at the lake of fire, there was also the connection to the waters of the darkness and the safe haven at the seashore where the waves and darkness and the dangers are. And this is basically where the darkness of the spiritual realm connects with the physical realm. And that's the gate or the portal.
And that is water and land anyway, isn't it? It's two different mediums.
And when someone that's unrighteous, if they die, they will go to this place that's there, and they are covered by these waters of darkness. They're entrapped. And I think the connection is made with Yeshua when he cast out Legion and all the demons. They wanted to go to waterless places and asked to be cast into the pigs. And then Yahweh made the joke and he made the pigs run into the water because that's where they need to go back to. That is beyond the gate, is the waters of the deep. And our oceans are connected to the waters of the deep. It's part of the same system. So the spiritual realm is the waters. It's the realm of Shamayim and Mayim, where Shamayim is the elevated one and Mayim is the low one. That's why our Jewish brothers don't like the ocean and the sea whatsoever. They won't build the beach house. They think it's evil. The ocean is evil. It's bad. Yeah.
And when the angel was called forth, he put 1 foot in the ocean and 1 foot on the land, and he proclaimed with a loud voice.
And he spoke to both realms of the living and the dead. That's powerful.
Very powerful.
Gee. Anyway, seesaw.
And if you think about it,
You never thought about it. Why?
Yeah.
Sorry.
and when you think about it, at the beginning of creation, there were no dark realms.
No.
It was all yes, there were different levels of creation, but it was all good. It was all light, and it will return to light.
Yeah, and all separate.
I think things got corrupted, and within a cycle, ended up in the beginning of a previous cycle, but it didn't exist at first. But after a while, as the wheels spin, there was a separation, and then that was the Bereshit state, where the pure cycle started, but above time, the evil was already separated, and part of this cleansing process, which is creation.
It's like a cancer. It starts off in one cell, but eventually it permeates the whole system.
Yeah. And I was using his washing machine, these cycles, to rinse it out, get it out. And the covenant is key.
Now, so a question that one seems to ask yourself. Yahweh created or reconstructed this whole system again from a fallen state. Says, and then he planted a garden in the east of Eden. And he placed Adam in the garden. Now the garden wasn't part of this outside system.
So Eden, what was Eden?
So you can see this duality already starting to form in his divine, he knew what was going to take place. So he prepared Adam to test him, to see if there was going to be, that this Adam would be like our Abraham, who would follow, or he would take a diversion. Straight away he's cast out of the garden. Why out of the garden? You know, these are questions that seem to roll in your mind. The tree of life in the garden, not outside the garden. So one sees this picture of, I don't know, it's difficult for me to explain. I'm just seeing a picture that I've never seen in a long time, you know. Why? Asking the question, why did it? And then they were cast out of the garden, and fiery cherub was put there to protect anybody going into
protect the way, the derek that leads to the tree of life.
So you can already see the cycles beginning to start forming.
Yeah, and the language of the Torah is already in context there. Very powerful. Now we're going to jump into a very nice topic now, which is still based on the same thing. But we're going to look at the creation of Adam in context of this covenant. And as I put it last time, these ingredients on the table, we're going to build the Adam. What do we need? So this is what this is. And what we need, 3 animals, 2 birds, and a furnace. And the furnace comes from Yahweh. And those are the things you need to make an Adam. Now we're going to see. So the word of Yahweh came to Abram, and that implies that the word was a person. In the same language, a voice walked in the garden in the cool of the day, and the word cool is the word ruach. Yeah. So the voice is a person who walked with Adam, and ruach was there. And ruach, I want to emphasize, is the letter Hey, or the sound of breath. And we're going to see this, the same letter a bit later on when we look at Abram's name, where Abram now walked with Yahweh in the cool with the garden with Ruach. That was the letter that's inserted into his name. It's garden language. Abraham is a neshama state of the nefesh Abram, which is the lowest state of Abram. So the Messiah is the person who is the word, who is the person, who is the voice. And that voice is the one who spoke, "Let there be light." And then the cycle started. And everything was created through him, because he's the voice. Everything was created by him, because he's all the words that was harmonizing on this voice. The voice is the energy, the breath, the ruach that carried the words and had the power to speak everything into existence. And the first manifestation of his words were light, which is himself. So he manifested himself in this lower space, and then from himself he created everything. All right, so the concept of the covenant and the speaking of the covenant through the voice of the Torah, the voice from the mountain, which was then written, and whenever read, get the energy of the voice, which is the ruach that make the spirit of the word alive. So you need to speak the written word in order to give it ruach, in order to give it life, and then the spirit will, through his gifts, manifest life through those words. They're all the same thing that existed in the garden.
And the secret knows that.
Yeah.
They use
And
that, isn't it?
the words through which Yahweh created, he's still creating through the same words which are now written down in the Torah, which is the DNA of Adam, the restored man, also known as Abraham. Right, Genesis 15. He took a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, 3-year-old ram. Anyone can see something that stands out. We've got a number 3. The letter Gimel means covenant. That's why it's 3 years old. 3 years can also mean 3 cycles. It can mean any length you want. So maybe it takes 3 cycles to establish the covenant in order to complete man. We might be in cycle number 2. And the reason I'm saying that, because I'm going to say something next in a couple of slides that will confirm this.
Just say it then.
Okay, the creation of man takes 3 cycles. The 3 animals were cut in half that made 6 parts or 6 processes. Number 6 is the letter Vav, that's part of Gimel. And with the spirit and man and 6, you see that the cutting of the covenant is all about man or Adam. When you cut the animals, the blood flowed and mixed and ran into the ground. And the sand in the ground is called Adamah. And Adamah is the essence that need to be connected to Dam, blood, to Aleph, which is Yahweh, in order to create the perfect Adam, the undefiled Adam. So what you can see here is the reverse engineering from a fallen state back to an elevated state, or the initial Adam, the original Adam. So the dam comes from the animals, and Yahweh himself is a consuming fire, and the hint we get is that it's a burning torch, which is Ish, or fire. So now we have the ingredient of the Aleph within Ish. We have the ingredient of fire, that's the heat, or the energy that's required for this. And we have the dam of the blood of the animals. And when we connect the Aleph to the dam, we get a dam. And then what's left is the shin, or the furnace, that moved between them. It's like a torch that is now welding things together You need the energy
So
to make that.
The shin or the fire, it represents the spirit.
Yeah. That's also the ruach. It also provides light.
Yes.
Let there be light. Ish. And then he created man from himself. He just used one part, the Aleph, the energy of the spirit, and then he needed blood. The original blood comes from him, which is the blood of the lamb, which is symbolic of the animals. Now, the 3 animals he used was a heifer, which has to do with cleansing, a ram that is linked to a Passover, and a goat that's linked to Yom Kippur. So those are the elements or the parts of the sacrifices that's prophetic of the sacrificial work of Mashiach, to provide the pure blood for the pure Adam, where the blood of the Nefesh, which is the animals, is for Adam, a small Nefesh Adam, a Ish Adamah, in a fallen state. So this is basically to restore you back to Adam's state. Now the birds, the other thing I want to connect here is the goldsmith uses fire to purify, the heifer purify, the burning furnace walking through the animals is the same concept of purifying gold, refining it, molding it, making something beautiful out of something precious. That's what we see here as well. The other thing I want to say here is that the restoration from the waters of the deep embedded in the sand, where the first Adam was separated and breathed into, the Adam, that is in the Eret state after he chose to be separated in a Neshama, which is the animal state. And they moved to a world of duality, which is outside the garden. So the Eret state, or the kingdom of Eret, is a lower state than the kingdom of Neshama, which is Shamayim, which is the elevated state. Now there's a state above Neshama. Remember I asked you, there are 4 levels. The one is the Sheol, then you have Eret, then you have Shamayim, and then there's Yahweh's realm. Now, when we move, when Adam fell, he was in a Nefesh state in the garden, but he was separated. Then they fell again, then they were separated outside the garden in a separated state, in a Nefesh state, in a world of duality. So taking the steps back, Yahweh wants to put us back into the garden, but we are still in a separated state. So when we get elevated or gathered as the bride, he put us back in the garden, and then we need to go through the next cycle to make us echad with him, because we are still Adam and Chava. And then to make us echad, we'll take the 12 layers of the city to bring us up to the level of echad. And that's where there's more cycles coming after this cycle to make us Adam. So that's roughly the 3.
How will we know what the cycle is? Do you think we will know what the cycle is?
So in general, there are 3 cycles. The first cycle is to get you out from the sand, out from underneath the waters of the deep. Now you're Eretz. The following cycle is to take you from Eretz into the garden. The third cycle is to take you through processes, which are the 12 levels of the city, to the level of Adam, which is the Echad state with Yahweh.
Do you think those 12 levels of the city are connected to the breastplate?
Yeah, that's the other thing is, when we
Because we are
coming to the breastplate, that's connected to the levels of the city. The high priest is connected to the priesthood. We are the priesthood, and the priesthood are the ones who are already elevated, but they're not echad yet. And I think the 12 crystals on the breastplate will tell us the cycles in the new cycle to be elevated to Adam's state.
Are we going to study the breastplate a little bit?
Yeah, when we get to the breastplate, which is in Leviticus. So any comments on those few radical statements?
Yeah, we really need to understand the differences of the sacrifices,
Yes.
where they are, what they are, the significance of them, and how they relate to a specific order of events that is supposed to have taken place.
Yeah.
What about the birds?
I'm going to get to the birds now. So I haven't had time, or I wouldn't have been allowed to spend more time to dissect the animals. Even further, only cut in half is good enough. But it will be good to analyze the animals, to unpack that, to see what's underneath the surface, because that will give us some answers on those things. But the birds are interesting in themselves. Where's my birds? I think I lost my birds. Okay, I think they down here. I don't know where they are. Anyway, I want to make another statement before I move on. The 6 parts of the 3 animals that were separated had a 7th part, which is the things that Yahweh did himself, that final process, which is moving as a furnace between it. That correlates with the 7th day of creation as well. When he rested is basically when everything becomes echad with him, where his light will absorb all darkness, or consume all darkness. Now the birds, here it is. Pigeon and a dove. Pigeon is the word gazelle. That means pigeon, nestling, and young birds. It's used in Deuteronomy 32 verse 11 as the young of an eagle that are protected under her wings. The dove is the word tor. That's the base word for the word Torah. And if you add the hay of the furnace, the light, to the dove, it reveals the Torah. And the Torah is of similar function as the gazelle, which is a covering of protection like a wing. And that's the language of Psalm 91, where you're under the wings of the Almighty. And the reason the birds are not separated, if you take the Torah and you remove any part, you remove your protection. You don't cut the Torah in half. You don't separate, because otherwise you tamper with your protection.
Also, with earlier on, when remember when the people were cleansed from leprosy, they had to bring the birds to the priest, and then the priest, when leprosy had left them, but they were offered. How did they put it? The birds had a significant part to play, because it was a form of being cleansed from your leprosy, to show that your body had now.
Was it 2 birds? They killed one, they dripped the blood into the water, then they hyssop and the red thing, they sprinkle that, and the other bird they let go free.
That's right.
From memory.
In that ceremony, there was something that was mentioned there, that not even the high priest had privileges of something like it.
Yeah. Oh, it's touching the ear.
Right.
Yeah. So the same things that were done to anoint a high priest was done to the leper.
Yes.
And the symbolism of the cleansing of the leper is the symbolism of Yom Kippur. It's also the symbolism of this covenant.
Yeah.
And they're all linked together.
If you say that the dove is the Torah, and the Torah can Torah cleanses you from
Yeah.
leprosy.
It does.
It's cleansing.
Yeah.
It's a cleansing process.
With
It's
this
like
Torah,
breathing
you
of the
cannot be
blood.
cleansed
No.
because you don't understand it. There's nothing there. Torah is Yeshua.
Yes, amen.
And to bring us back to Noah, the waters of the flood were designed to get rid of the Gibor,
Yeah.
the giants.
Yes.
Then Yahweh decided, I'm not going to use water again, I'm going to use another type of water, which is the water of the word, which is the Torah. And it's the Torah that take care of the enemy. So whatever they release, the Torah is the only thing that
And
can.
we will have protection.
And you are protected under the wings of the Almighty. The wings of the Torah, no other wings.
Yes.
And the wings are the titi, the commandments.
Yes.
They guard us and protect us.
Then you can understand the words. Jerusalem, oh Jerusalem, how I long to gather you as a hen would gather her wings under her chicks under her wings. Hey, all these things just keep.
The same symbolism.
Keep fulfilling themselves. Eh?
And then Noah sends out the Torah to see if there's any place that the Torah
Can rest.
can rest.
Yeah.
And it took twice.
And then the sun came out after the rain, and the light and the Torah made the Torah. Yeah.
It's amazing. Also, the birds were, one of the birds are mentioned as offerings that poor people could
Yes,
do.
you can do a sin sacrifice with a dove.
And you don't need to be rich to have the Torah,
No.
but it makes you rich.
Yes.
Yeah. The poor is also symbolism of the humble.
Yeah.
And the bird is for the poor, the Torah is for the humble. It's Hebrew poetry.
That's right.
Yeah.
The ones who will bend down.
All in the symbolism of the
And you've got the
sacrifices.
two realms there, birds are from the
Shamim, yeah.
and the animals of the
From the Reds. And they connect the two together, fulfilling the promise given to Abraham. Your generation will be of Shamayim, the stars, the birds. The Torah will elevate you. So much in this covenant, isn't it? Amazing. And now we're going to look at the covenant in the form of the good book and the 6 Alephs. Now the covers of this book is made of a mem and a shin, water and fire. The waters are the waters in the beginning, and the fire is the fire of what is to come. And those are connected into one cover because the one's end is the other one's beginning. And what you find within the pages is the sections within the covenant. And there are the first 2,000 years, which is the time of darkness, from the point of darkness until Tower of Babel. Then Abraham came, the second set of 2 Alephs, up to Moshe. And then the last one is the time of light. So the first time Yahweh spoke, then with Moses it was written, and with Yeshua it was lived. People walked in it. It gave it life. So the Torah is the words of creation that were written down and then expressed through Messiah and his people. And that's basically the idea of the 6 Alephs, as well as the expression of the covenant through the medium of creation, through the medium of learning, and through the medium of walking, halakha, and then being transformed. By the time you get to the end cover, which is the fire, which is we prepare through these steps for the end of this cycle, which is fire, and then the water, the new cycle begin. And then you prepare through the steps, and then the new one begin. So you just circle through this 5 steps and 5 sections. Now these 5 sections also represent the 5 things you need for a kingdom. Now the first thing you need is people, that's Abram. The second thing you need is a government system, that's Moshe and the Torah. The third thing you need is the land, that's King David. The fourth thing you need is a king, that's Messiah. And the fifth thing you need is a house and a palace, that's the Melchizedek, the priest of Shalom, the one who is related to eternal life, who is king and priest. So that's just an interesting picture to look at the Torah in relation to the covenant. I think I already said all of this. Well, I'm not going to go anything through there. It's just the phases of restoration from a point of darkness, fallen state to elevated state. And what we are currently in, we are between the two cycles. It's a cycle of separation, which is to come. And we are currently in the cycle of preparation, or the cycle of grace and salvation, which has to do with the covenant. And for those who don't prepare, they will find themselves in a cycle of separation, and they will then go through this thing in the next one. And those who engage with the covenant, they will be elevated to the kingdom of Shamahim, while the others will stay in the kingdom of Eretz, but at the seashore, where the lake is, where the gate is, where Sheol is, the kingdom of darkness. And then the next cycle is ready for the Bereshit moment, and then Yahweh will say, let there be light, and then we will twinkle, twinkle, little star in the presence of Yisrael, the kingdom of Shamahim. Yahweh created heavens and the earth. And then the next cycle starts with the one still entrapped within Eretz, those outside the city, beyond the gate. Yeah. Last one, Abram. Looking at his name, Aleph-Bet Resh Yod. No, that's not, that's Hebrew, sorry. Hebrew. Abram is Aleph-Bet Resh Mem. So what you can see from this is, in the middle you have Bet Resh. What does that spell? Sun. And seed. Now, if you look at the words, what we normally refer to in the center or in the middle is also the heart. So in the heart of Abram is the son. In the heart of a Hebrew is the son. The son is the son of Yahweh, the one who came forth from the originator. So that's where we get the idea, I get Yeshua in my heart. He's in my essence of my being. I've got his nature within me. And that's Abram. He started with that. The center of the Torah, 2 words, Dorosh Darash. That's Abram's nature. Certainly search. He was looking, asking questions. And then Yahweh came and he answered them. So that was in his heart, to search for the Son, to search from something that come out from this God that is the unseen one. And that's why Yahweh came and revealed himself to him. Ibri means from regions beyond, one from beyond. In modern language, an alien. No, I don't want to say Yahweh's alien. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying from the realm of Shamahim or beyond Shamahim is the one who is a Hebrew. So the Hebrew culture is Yahweh's culture. It's not the Jews' culture. It's not Abraham's culture. Abraham became a Hebrew after he Lech Lechah, after he obeyed Yahweh. Then he was transformed and he received the hay that transformed him into Abraham, where he had the spirit of Yahweh being restored back as in a Neshama state. And then Yahweh could use him as an Abraham. So everyone living today who have received the spirit of Yahweh, you are now a Ivri, a Hebrew, because you are one from beyond. And what have we talked about? The halakha or halach or yalak. It's to carry something. You first leave, then you take something to bring it to someone else. So the function of Ivri is to come from a region beyond, understanding. Like the spirit, no one knows where you're going, where you're coming from. It's from the region beyond. You get your insights from Yahweh, which is not from this world, and you bring that message to people. And when they accept that message, they will accept the Son in their hearts, and then they will become Ivri as well and be part of the same. So becoming Ivri is also becoming part of Israel, the ones who doesn't have the crooked backs, the ones who stand up straight. So Hebrew or Ivri is the gematria of 282. Interesting number, isn't it? Number 8 is in the middle, new beginnings. Number 2, left, right. The 2 houses. The house of Eretz and the house of Shamayim. The 2 houses of duality. One is on the right, the spiritual, one is on the left, physical. And the one is also the letter Bet, which is the big bet in Parashah, where the words float from, which is the speaking of the Torah from the house into the realm of Eretz, or the kingdom of Eretz. And the house on the right is the house of Yahweh, the city. Now the gematria of 282 means enclosure. Let's call it a dome, so we everyone know what we're talking about. Mixed beasts, let's call them the Shama, or the nations. Help, assistance, one from beyond, in Hebrew. So we need a camel or a helper that can help the mixed beasts or the nefesh to become Hebrew or neshama, to become and meet the one from beyond. And they're all currently in an enclosure, which is this world or this dome, underneath the dome. And that's found in the word Ivri, Hebrew. And Abram was the first Hebrew. Or shall I say the second one? The first one was the voice, walking in the garden. He was the first Hebrew. Hebrew is connected to the word beasts. If we shuffle the letters, Hebrew is Ayin Bet Resh Yod, with Bar in the center. We see the Ayin on the right hand side. Ayin means eye. Eyes on the right, spiritual insight, the enlightened ones. They see, they have a vision, they understand the plan. We've got the Yod on the left. The Yod is under your foot, that uplift you, that help you, so you can be the Gimel walking halakha through this desert called this life. Beautiful picture. Beasts, they shuffled the words, and you have the Ayin Yod in the middle. So that's the core essence of their being, is to touch and feel and to see. Seeing is believing. Everything is physical. That's the makeup of a fallen one, and a fish. And their bet resh is on the outside. Resh means leader, so they'll always follow the strong ones. And bet is a house. Whatever house they assemble with, within their culture, within their religion, they will connect there. So to become Hebrew, I've written Hebrew slightly different here. We've got Bar, which is the son. He's also known as the right hand. He is the one that laid the hand upon the head, which is the Yod, to open up the eyes. That's a miracle Yeshua did, where he touched the eyes of a man after he mixed some of his spittle with Adamah, or the earth. And our job as Hebrews is to restore sight to the blind, liberty to the captives, and declare the acceptable year of Yahweh, which is the year of Jubilee, the year of freedom. The freedom from the kingdom of Eretz and to access the kingdom of Shamayim. And if you don't have your eyesight open, you can't see it. A lot of people, you can tell them the truth, they don't get it. They need the supernatural sight restored so they can see. It can only be done through the anointing of Yahweh's Spirit.
You see that seeing is believing is opposite of faith, where we believe what we can't see.
Yes.
And so therefore the mark of the beast, which is what you will see, is the mark of for those who don't have the spiritual insight, but only see what they can touch and feel and believe what they can see, and it's been tied up in the beast, the word beast.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's so many insights coming from this. Now, Abraham, if you look at the word, it's got bar in the middle, which is son, and you have Aleph Mem on the opposite sides, right and left, which makes the word Am, that means mother. Now, this mother is not the one that marries her son. This mother is the bride marrying the Son of God. And then she become pregnant and have an offspring and become the father of a multitude, which is in the name Avram. So within his name you see the mother, you see the son, who is the groom, the mother is the bride. So prophetically within the letters you can see what Yahweh saw in him. And from his seed will come the bar, the son. It is within him. And he just revealed to him his plan, which is the letter Hey, and he became Avraham with his iron or his spiritual eyesight. Open up, and he became the first Hebrew, Ivri. All interlinked.
Does it make sense?
I think Am also means people.
Yes, Israel, that's it, the people of Israel.
And Berit Am is covenant people. So you can see the people coming, following the son through Father Abraham. The one has been enlightened. And we're not from this world, we are from beyond. We're Ivri. Right, so that's all.
See the link between Yetzer and Eretz? Yetzer is really Eretz.
Yeah.
First,
Yeah.
corrupted form of.
So the corruption is within the ground, entrapped in the ground under the waters of darkness, under the authority of the power in the air. All right, so that's all, folks.
Is that all?
That's all. But what fascinated me is the amount of information in that simple commandment that was repeated twice. Lamed Kaf, Lamed Kaf.
Now, I know this takes it off in a whole different direction, but something that's puzzled me for a long time is Melchizedek. The priesthood of Melchizedek. And this predates the giving of the law, the establishment of the Levitical priesthood. There just seems to be some information missing in that whole area. For me, it's a big question mark. Is that for another time?
Yes, all I can say is there is a link to the word, the voice in Melchizedek that existed before or during the time of Bereshit. Before he spoke, those existed. because he's the king of Shalom, the righteous king. Now Yahweh created from a kingdom, and his followers within his kingdom is called Elohim, and he's the righteous king of the kingdom of Elohim, and in his kingdom there's Shalom. So he existed before creation, Melchizedek.
Yeah, okay. So that, yeah.
So he's a above time entity, which I believe is Mashiach,
Yeah.
because he's king and priest.
Yes.
And I
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I don't believe Yahweh left anybody out on the limb when it came to spiritual things. But he was the king of Salem, which is Jerusalem.
Yeah.
People didn't have an excuse to say, well, all is lost in the past. They still had Salem, which they could go to where they would receive instruction. Shem, Abraham received instruction from Shem.
Yeah.
He was sent to Shem with a big story around it.
Yeah.
He wrote his father's idols. Shem taught him. His birth was recorded in the stars. That's why they sought to kill him. That's why Nimrod sought to kill him. So, when you look at all these things, Yahweh at all the stages of history has placed milestones of teaching for people. They can't turn and say, well, we've never had it. They've been missing. There's no excuse.
Yeah.
Absolutely no excuse. Teaching has always been there, and there's always been somebody that has taken that teaching and has distributed it out to others all the way through history. I don't believe anything happened by chance. It's done by divine planning.
And it's perfect in sequence, 100% to the way he planned.
Because how did that Abraham, he knew to give tithing to Melchizedek. It was in his heart. He had obviously met him before.
Yeah, Bar, the son, is in his heart. It's revealed to him on a deep level.
Exactly. Wasn't by chance.
When the three men came, he bowed down because he knew in his heart who that was.
Yeah.
I met him before. He was the one speaking to me, the word coming to me.
Yeah.
In the Lech Lechah, the thing that stood out to me today when I read the word is go get yourself out. So that we have a part to play. Get yourself out.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I'll just wait and hang
I
out
wait
and
for
see what
someone to
happens.
save me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, see, by involving ourselves in the cycles and keeping Torah, you're actively prepared to go. It's your self part. Yeah. There's a false understanding of grace can be, Yahweh will do it, just sit back and do nothing. Yes. You can't do anything anyway. He does it all, that kind of thinking. It says, get yourself out. Get out of Babylon.
It's your responsibility. You're the only one to blame.
Yeah.
And it's your job to find out, to search. Certainly search. Don't be complacent. Don't just accept everything. Test everything. Especially in these days. Now, I really enjoyed this study when I prepared it.
Very relevant, isn't it? Very relevant.
Yeah, very relevant. Yeah.
The preparation.
Now, isn't that interesting that every week we study something is relevant for today, this time, personal level, prophetic level, historical level. Yeah. All right. If there's no more questions. Oh, we lost Asher. Anyway. Anyone want to close in prayer?
Father, again, this morning, we just have this privilege of being able to thank you for the word. We thank you for the instruction. We thank you for the teaching of the Holy Spirit. And thank you, Father, that we have never, ever been left out in the open to fend for ourselves. You said in your word, you will never leave us nor forsake us. And we want to thank you for that privilege that you've upheld us, taught us, strengthened us, and given us the courage to keep going. Even when times are hard, we bless you for the families that serve you, we bless you for your word, we bless you for the day, the food that we eat, the clothing we wear, and we bless you, Father, for just being our Father. We give you praise in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.